What if I told you that the worst years of your life might actually be the most important thing that ever happened to you? We live in a culture that is absolutely obsessed with optimization. If you do not pick a career by 22, you are falling behind. If you do not specialize by 25, people say you are lost. Psychologists call this pain the generalist curse. It is that sinking feeling that you are a jack of all trades but a master of none. You feel like you know a little bit about everything, but you are not great at anything. Let us be honest for a second. Have you ever looked at your friends on social media and felt a knot in your stomach because they are buying houses and getting promoted while you are still trying to figure out what you want to do with your life? This is called social comparison, and it is a trap that kills your confidence. If you have ever felt like you are running out of time, or that you are behind everyone else, I want you to type the number 1 in the comments right now. Go ahead and type the number 1. Do not do it to complain. Do it to prove to yourself that you are not alone in this feeling. Because the story I am about to tell you will change how you see your failures forever. It is the story of a man named Thomas. At 33 years old, Thomas was considered a total failure by his village. He had a resume filled with gaps. He had quit farming. He had quit carpentry. He had quit blacksmithing. To the outside world, he was a quitter. But what nobody knew was that Thomas was not wasting his time. He was doing something science now calls skill stacking. His brain was not failing. It was rewiring itself in a way that would soon make him the most valuable person in the world. Let me show you how to turn your aimless wandering into your greatest weapon. Thomas was not lazy. He was actually incredibly hardworking. But he was stuck in what his village called the quitter cycle. At 25, he tried farming. He hated it and quit after 6 months. Then he became an apprentice to a master carpenter. For 3 years, he learned how to feel the grain of the wood and make precise cuts. Then he quit. The village started to whisper, "Look at him. He never finishes anything." Next, Thomas worked with a blacksmith. For 2 years, he learned to conquer fire and bend iron with heavy hammers. Then he left again. Finally, he studied under a scribe, learning to write and think with logic. By the time Thomas turned 33, he had trained under 5 different masters. He had finished none of them. His younger brother owned land and had a family. Thomas had nothing but a pair of strange-looking hands. They were rough from carpentry, scarred from blacksmithing, and stained with ink from writing. To the outside world, he was a broken project, a resume filled with holes. One cold night, Thomas sat in his empty room and cried. He looked at his hands and said, "I am a 33-year-old failure." But one morning, an old blacksmith named Marcus looked at Thomas and laughed. He said, "You are not a failure, you are a collector. Here is where we need to bring in behavioral science." Those years Thomas spent jumping between jobs are what psychologists call a sampling period. It feels like wasting time, but it is actually data collection. Every time he switched skills, his brain was undergoing neuroplasticity. Carpentry gave him geometry, blacksmithing gave him physics, writing gave him logic. Thomas was not the best carpenter, he was not the best blacksmith, but he was the only person in the world who had stacked all 3 skills into one mind. This is what we call skill stacking. The village called it wasting time, but I call it the forge. The fire in the forge is hot and painful, but that is how steel is made. If you are currently working on a project or a skill in the dark and nobody sees your value yet, please hit the like button on this video right now. Go ahead and hit it. Treat that click as a promise to yourself that you will stay in the forge until you turn into steel. Because for Thomas, the fire was about to stop and the magic was about to begin. A wealthy lord came to the village. He needed a magnificent gate built for his estate. It was a nightmare project. He required intricate wood carving complex ironwork and written history inscribed on the panels. The village experts were paralyzed. The carpenter said, "I cannot do metal." The blacksmith said, "I cannot do wood." The writer knew nothing of building. This is the hidden cost of specialization. When the world gets complex, specialists get stuck. That is when Thomas stepped forward. The crowd laughed at him. They shouted, "Go home, quitter." But Thomas looked at the Lord and said, "I can do all three." He asked for 30 days. When Thomas started working, he entered a state of flow. Because he knew wood, he knew exactly how to bend the iron so it would not burn the timber. Because he knew writing, he knew how to carve the panels so the words would stand out. He was not just working, he was synthesizing. On day 30, the Lord returned. The village gathered ready to mock Thomas one last time. But when the cover was pulled off the gate, the crowd went silent. It was a masterpiece. The wood and iron danced together in a way no specialist could have ever designed. The Lord asked him, "How is this possible?" Thomas replied, "I worked on myself in silence for 8 years. While you thought I was lost, I was becoming." Thomas spent 8 years figuring this out by accident. But you do not have to wait that long. You can do it on purpose starting today using a system I call the puzzle model. Here's how you do it in 3 steps. Step 1 is audit your graveyard. I want you to write down every project or hobby you have ever quit. Do not look at them with shame. Look at them as raw materials. Step 2 is extract the skill. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I kept from that experience? Maybe you quit your sales job, but you learned how to handle rejection. Maybe you quit design school, but you learned about color. Step 3 is the synthesis. This is the most important part. Stop trying to compete with specialists on their own turf. Instead, combine 2 of your mismatched skills to build something rare. If you know coding and you also know gardening, build an app for farmers. If you know painting and you also know accounting, create visual financial guides. That is how you become a monopoly of one. 2 years after building the gate, a young man named Daniel knocked on Thomas' door. Daniel was 22 years old, and he looked exactly like Thomas used to look. Tired, anxious, and defeated. He told Thomas, "I have tried 3 different jobs this year, and I failed at all of them. Everyone says I am wasting my life." Thomas invited him in and poured him some tea. He did not judge the boy. Instead, he smiled and said, "I was lost until I was 33. That is 11 years of wandering." He showed Daniel his tools, the carpentry chisels, the blacksmith hammers, and the writing quills. Thomas said, "Do you see these? 8 years ago, people thought I could not finish anything. Today, I am the most sought-after craftsman in the kingdom. Not because I was born special, but because I spent years working on myself in silence." This is the final lesson I want you to take away today. Mastery is not built under the spotlight. It is built in the dark. It is built in the quiet moments when nobody is clapping for you. When you are struggling to learn a new skill and you feel like quitting, remember Thomas. You are not wasting time. You are in the forge. The heat is uncomfortable, but that is necessary to turn raw iron into steel. Thomas had to suffer for 8 years to figure this formula out alone. But Daniel learned it in a single afternoon because he had a guide. There are people in your life right now who are just like Daniel. They are talented, but they feel lost. They feel like they are falling behind. I want you to share this video with just one person who needs to see this map. Help them save 8 years of frustration. Give them the permission to stop panicking and start building their own stack. Thank you for visiting the Forge today. You are not failing. You are becoming. Now get back to work.